Hello, everyone. My name is Robertson. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Picmonic, and we are joined today by Dr. Nav, the CEO and founder of MEDspiration. What up, Nav? How you doing?
How you doing, guys?
Yeah, let's get the mic on. Make sure we can hear you.
Sure.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so absolute pleasure to have you on the show today, and I'm really pumped to talk to you about your journey. And I don't know even where to begin. You and I have had some fascinating conversations over the last couple of days, just getting to know each other a little better. And I'm excited to share some of your journey and your story with our audience and our listeners today. So where are you calling in from right now, just to place this?
Yeah, I'm currently Chicago, Illinois. And before we get started, I just want to say hello. It's a pleasure and honor to be here on this webinar. So thank you, Ron, for having me.
Absolutely. So let's do this. Just, we have a lot of people joining us from around the country, around the world, and maybe they've seen one of the webinars before, maybe they haven't. So just a little bit of context, we love to speak with inspiring students, professionals, owners of businesses, companies doing amazing things. And, we got connected to you actually through social media, but you've got a really, really, really neat story that I'm excited to kind of let you share today. So let's go ahead and at least take it back a few years, or maybe we can place it right now. You are currently where in your medical education?
Yeah, so currently I am a fourth-year medical student. I'm in my last rotation of medical school. I recently cleared the USMLE Step 2CK, so I'm officially done with the medical school USMLEs, which is Step 1, Step 2CS, Step 2CK. And I am on par with matching in 2019, so I'm applying in September. So pray for me.
And what kind of residency do you want to go into? Which direction are you looking?
Yeah, so one of the things that really caught my eye through my training was OB-GYN. I love delivering babies. So throughout medical school, like there was a 2-week period in my third year where I delivered like 15 babies in like 2 weeks. Yeah, it was phenomenal, man. And I really enjoyed empowering the women and just being able to help out in any way that I could. So I would love to match an OB-GYN. I'm looking into internal also because I'm an indecisive person. So internal would give me a lot of options in the future, and family medicine. So, we'll see where God lands me.
That's great. That's great. Actually, my father is a family practitioner, and my mom was essentially a nurse midwife and delivered thousands of babies. Great. It was kind of an interesting duo, being from a rural community. My mom would deliver the babies, and then my father would end up being kind of the healthcare provider of the family throughout time. And so, I went to medical school as well. I started at the University of Arizona College of Med in 2009. I did 2009, 10, and 11. And then 2011 is actually when I started Picmonic. And for me, we all have very interesting challenges that we face throughout our journey, I think in life, but, we're going to keep this maybe more specific and focused on becoming a healthcare professional today. And for me, one of my biggest challenges was I struggled to remember everything I learned. I'm just going to go ahead and say everything. There's so much information, so many drugs and bugs and diseases and all these little nuanced facts. And I found it incredibly difficult to actually retain that information long term. And so, for me, the impetus of starting Picmonic was actually turning these all the facts into silly cartoons and picture mnemonics, which is where Picmonic came from. And then, really wanted to take that and get that out to the world and share it with others. And so kind of, that's placed us now, I think 7 years later, leading the charge of Picmonic. And, we've helped over 400,000 students across the country and the world learn more efficiently and remember information longer, pass exams, hopefully become better, competent healthcare providers. But the interesting or great thing about it is it's now given me an opportunity to speak with people like you. So let's talk about MEDspiration. What is MEDspiration? Where did it begin? Why and how?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'm the
I'm
CEO
the
and
CEO of
nonprofit
nonprofit
organization.
organization.
So it all
So it
started
all
first year of medical school. We have a very similar story because I know that you, after you took step one, that's kind of when you, like a week
right.
after, decided to found Picmonic, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
for me, before I started medical school, I was always a huge student of the mind, body, spirit philosophy, which is, so
Love
we're
it.
all one organism, and I like to think of us one whole organism as three separate parts, which we can all exercise, right? So we can exercise our mind, we can exercise our body, we can exercise our spirit. So by the time I started medical school, I was already doing all three. So I would meditate daily, and one of the things that so contrary to popular belief, I went to a Caribbean med school, and there are some advantages of going to a Caribbean medical school. One of them was the beautiful beach. So, right when I walk outside of where I lived, I would have the most beautiful beach in the world, arguably, right? So every morning I'd wake up before I go to class, I would go meditate out at the ocean. And there's one morning I was meditating at the ocean, and that's when the idea in my first year of medical school kind of dawned on me, where the idea of medspiration came to me. And I'm a huge Oprah Winfrey fan. I'm sure everybody here, you guys know who Oprah Winfrey is, or you've heard of her. So one of the things she said really stuck with me for my whole life. Before she started the most successful talk show in human history, she said the most important thing that had to go right before she could get to that point was her intentions. So she said that her intentions were bigger than herself in terms of, she said her intention was to raise the consciousness of the human species through her platform. And because she made the idea bigger than herself, she felt like she wasn't being selfish, and she could really give her all and have other people join, and it would be something that they could work for something greater than themselves. And when the idea of MEDspiration came to me, it was very similar. It wasn't about me, it was more about what can we give to the world through this idea, right? So that's when I just started blogging. What I started doing was just writing a lot about the mind, the body, the spirit, nutrition, maternity, and slowly but surely got started on social media. So Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, those are the main platforms. And we gained a lot of traction. We were reaching a lot of healthcare professionals, people who were in healthcare, who were really interested in this mind, body, spirit concept. We eventually got featured on ABC News, on Business Insider, and the Doctor's TV. And that's
Wonderful.
kind of when social media stuff really took off. And I'm sorry, I'm getting tangential, but
It's
so
good.
eventually
That was the story.
decided that this would be a nonprofit organization because I did want it to be bigger than myself, and I wanted it to be something that we could offer to the world. So today, in 2018, we're a 501c3 public charity, and we actually just completed a clean water mission in South Africa, which I flew out there myself, and we got to be a part of that. I'm looking forward to talking about that too if we have time. So.
I mean, I wanna hear about it all. Um, so as a nonprofit focused on mind, body, and spirit, definitely tying back up to just the greater good here. And it's interesting, it's you started this as a medical student, right? Even your first year in medical school, which is, we're already overwhelmed as is. How did find the time, and why? What was one of the big drivers? I appreciate Oprah as the inspiration, but even then, the mission behind this for you, something you said on a previous call was that you didn't want to wait, right? So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, probably really similar to how you were with Picmonic. Like, you knew maybe when you had the idea at that point, you really wanted to take action rather than just sitting there. And for me, medical school, you're right, it will take up your entire mind, body, and spirit if you let it. And like, for me, I was always rebellious in a sense, where I always wanted control over my time. And even if I'm going through medical school, I want to be able to say this is my time and I run this. And that had a lot to do with it, I think, because I always took time to be creative while I was studying and while I was going to classes and while I was doing a lot of mentorship stuff, right? So long story short, you know, putting in work every day through MEDspiration actually kept me inspired in medical school, because I felt like I had to live up to the hype of MEDspiration, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I would always find a reason to stay inspired through the work, right? So as I was building through medical school and building MEDspiration, I felt like whenever I got really, really burnt out or really tired with the medical knowledge of it, I always had a space where I could go to my creative zone, and I would actually use what I would learn and I would share it with now millions of people, right? And it's kind of cool because it was like using the knowledge that we would learn in medical school and kind of applying it and giving it to millions of people. So in between that, that's kind of where the balance started. And then it's just habitual. So, you start doing this every week, every day. And it's just, the rest is history,
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So what is the mission of MEDspiration? If you have to just kind of restate that for us.
Yeah. So we have three main pillars in our mission statement. That's to advance the human potential, to improve the quality of life, and to raise the consciousness. We got that from Oprah, because God bless Oprah. So in that, we're very blessed. We have a team of rock stars, a lot of some medical doctors, two medical doctors specifically, who are our director of education, who you kind of know because he went to U of A.
Yeah.
He goes to U of A. He's an intern there, and Dr. Mariam. So we have a team full of rock stars who really keep our team going. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, just going back to the South Africa mission, that was something that we knew that we wanted to do a clean water project somewhere, because it's a little simpler. We're a smaller organization right now. We're still building.
Yeah.
This all happened through social media, so I think you'll find this very interesting. Our Instagram, MEDspiration, it has over 200,000 followers now, right? And
Incredible.
we had an emergency medicine doctor reach out to us about 2 years ago, and he's from South Africa. So he's done Doctors Without Borders, and he's done a lot of work for nonprofits. And he reached out to us because he was like, hey, like, I live in an area, the kids are very poor. They have no water, they have no electricity, and they don't really have the means that most of us have, right? So he was just wondering what we could do for them. And this was something that I shared with our whole social platform. So on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter, and Facebook. And, we got a lot of support from our followers. So our followers were like, yes, we want to be able to help out. We actually were able to send a physician, and this all happened through Instagram too, to South Africa on behalf of MEDspiration. And that was cool because they got to go live, kind of like we're going live right now, while they were doing it, which allowed us to raise awareness while we had doctors giving help out there.
Yeah.
And then recently, just between my two rotations, I just went back to South Africa, and we just completed our clean water mission. So basically, we were
about the clean water mission a little bit.
Yeah. So we were able to fundraise through all of our wonderful followers, family, and friends, for these kids to have water. So one thing that they don't have, it's a community center in Johannesburg, South Africa. It's in the outskirts of the Gauteng province. It's an unofficial township. So the people there aren't officially there. They're not citizens. It's called a squatter or a shanty town, right? That's what they call it. So out there, they'll go 5-6 days without water. So when I was actually there on the ground, and when I got there, we had already installed these water tanks. We got in touch with a plumbing company, and they installed those water tanks like a week before I got there, right? So when I got there, they're going to have running water every single day from this day forward. And before that, they would go 5-6 days without water, and they just put water in jugs. They're literally like this big. And, coming from America, like, I feel like we don't really see poverty on that level. We don't see people who don't have the main amenities, just food, water, electricity, shelter. Those are things we take for granted every day, right? And going out there, seeing people that don't have anything, and actually seeing that we made a real life change. When I got to see that they're going to have water and how happy they really were, you can't put a dollar sign to that. It's priceless to see that real change can happen. And it didn't take much. It just took everybody coming together. So, I'm praying we could do more things like that, because I can't even tell you how rewarding it felt.
Well, and even, I think on my end of it, just hearing you share your story, I mean, it inspired me. It's why we really wanted to get you on the show and help share your message with the world, and help, not to say promote, but promote you guys and what you're doing, because it really is amazing. It's easy for us to, and I'm not trying to speak in generalizations, but it's easy for us to take things for granted, where we are, what we have. Sometimes takes it different takes getting outside of our own world and into a different world in order to really see how fortunate we are. So, in your trip to South Africa, how did you fund even some of the water? And is this coming from donations? And how does this tie back to MEDspiration? And how do people participate? How do we get others out there helping benefit the mission that you're pushing?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So yeah, we fundraised through our nonprofit organization for this water project. A lot of it was done simply through social media. MEDspiration, we reach over 1 million people a week, so we're really blessed in that. Like, I'm really consistent with trying to build this platform because it's if we could advance the human potential, improve the quality of life through this, it's a huge thing. So a lot of the donations came straight through there. A lot of it came from people that I know. Like, I'm having my 10-year high school reunion coming up next month, which it's crazy to think it's been 10 years since high school now. But they're actually donating 100% of the proceeds to MEDspiration, which that was never in my wildest dreams that I imagined that would happen. But the beauty of a nonprofit organization and a charity is we had a lot of people start fundraisers for us, right? And they just believed in the vision. They believed in what we were doing. So a lot of it happened effortlessly, and that's where I was just mind blown that effortlessly we could actually fundraise enough to make such a big difference. This all while I was in medical school, and to tie this into medical school is really big because I want all the medical students out there to understand that you can do well. You can do well in school. You could do well. You could stay physically fit, and you could be creative. And there is such thing as having a balance while doing that, right? So, and now one thing we are working on in MEDspiration is interns. We're trying to get interns for pre-med and med students mainly, where, I do a lot of video production as well. And cool fact, on YouTube, if you type in USMLE, the most popular YouTube video for USMLE is MEDspiration's video by Dr. Alex. He got a 254 on step one. He's just very, very on top of everything that he does. And I produced that. He narrated it. We collaborated on that while we were in medical school. We got a step 2 CK video out too. And this was just for fun, right? But in between that time, seeing the popularity of it, I started recognizing throughout medical school that, I had cool opportunities happening while I was dedicated, and I try to mentor a lot of students, and I tell them, like, this is all possible for every single one of us. And without getting tangential, one of the things you'll see Kobe Bryant right here, if you can see him.
And Muhammad.
Yeah. So I'm a huge Kobe Bryant fan. Grew up in California. Huge fan of the Mamba Mentality, which for those people out there who aren't familiar with Kobe Bryant, he's a 5-time NBA champion. What is the Mamba Mentality? It's very simple. Trying to be the best version of yourself on a daily basis. Now, seems cliche, seems simple, but this is something this philosophy I was doing since the first year of medical school. I wake up, I go meditate, I tune myself into being the best version of myself, and I don't want to allow anything to take me out of that, and like literally everything becomes a result of that intention, right? And that's something that with the students that I've been able to mentor, I get to see them apply that, and I get to see the fruition of that for them. It's a win-win all around, so it's a beautiful thing.
So maybe we could get a little tactical right there. It's setting the intention, starting your day out with meditation, doing these things. What do you even give advice to somebody? Let's say they've never meditated. They don't know what setting intentions are all about. They don't know how to be their best every single day. What are simple things that you would tell somebody who might be listening today to take away? What is an actionable thing that they can do? Or do you have any tips around this?
That's wonderful. That's a great question. So in my second year of medical school, I went to UCSD. We did this integrative medicine program. There was 5 physicians, 20 med students. And they taught us a lot of things. And there were a few very applicable meditation techniques. So for anybody who's interested in meditating, you could look up 4-7-8 on YouTube. And literally it's a breathing technique, takes less than 2 minutes, and it just oxygenates your entire body. So 4-7-8 for the simple stuff. So a few applicable meditations. One that I learned that was really simple in San Diego from physicians was just go out in nature. Barefoot if you can on some grass or something like that. But for 10 to 15 minutes, don't speak. Just analyze your surroundings, pay attention to how nature works, pay attention to the sounds, and just take time to take it all in. That's a very simple meditation, but after 15 minutes, you kind of take time to get out of your headspace and kind of become one with everything around you. And you'll realize just those 15 minutes, it'll completely change the trajectory of your day, right? So just off top, a couple things, the 4-7-8 technique, and just going outside, getting a breath of fresh air, and just taking time to analyze nature. Those are things that'll really get you in your element, and those are things that help me every day. So I hope it helps somebody out there.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And it's interesting. So, well, I mean, you talked about going to the Caribbean for medical school, and obviously walking out on the most beautiful beach, and it being the inspiration for MEDspiration. Or at least where you developed kind of the concept and the idea, and where it had birthplace. Where do you see, if we were to fast forward 5 years from today, Nav, where do you see MEDspiration being, and what's kind of the next level up that you want to achieve with it?
Yeah, so after South Africa, the intention became very clear to me. In the next 5 years, one of the things that I want MEDspiration to be able to accomplish is medical missions in every single country. So one of the things I always tell our board, and I'm a big believer in speaking things into existence and believing in them, thinking of them every day. We want to win a Nobel Peace Prize. I know that's a very long shot, but at the end of the day, I say this to my board every day. Hey guys, we're going to get that Nobel Peace Prize. We're going to be in every country one day. So basically our work won't stop until everybody on this planet is fed and educated and has medical access, right? So that's kind of an endless mission until that happens, right? But the main thing I really want to be able to do, medical doctors, nurses, medical professionals, and individuals who would like to just come along on missions, every single country, anywhere where there's underprivileged or underdeveloped countries, nations, small towns, we want to be able to get out there and really provide some help. And we're really blessed through our social platforms. We have an influx of too many doctors who want to do a lot, and we haven't really organized the fine details. So, and that's a really big blessing, because at the end of the day, once we get those hashed out, this could be implemented on that big scale. So that's definitely one of the things I would dream of us doing.
So medical missions in every single country, it's by no means a small feat. And we're excited to see you accomplish it. I mean, truly, I think that what you guys have started is incredible, and I love the direction it's going. So, for someone listening today, how do they get in? How do they donate? How do they help? Tell me a little bit just as far as where they go, how they follow MEDspiration, etc. Before we kind of bridge over to the next part of this, which is I want to talk a little bit about your actual journey through medical school and challenges there, and how the mind, body, spirit connection has helped you through difficult times.
Yeah. So the main thing with how to get involved with MEDspiration. So you guys will follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. A lot of our information, we directly communicate with all of our followers. So, when there are opportunities through all of those platforms, we let everybody know what the opportunities are. You could go on our website, medspire.org, to read more about our mission and how you could get involved. I know in the future, one of the things that we want to be able to do is scholarship opportunities. Like one thing, when I went to South Africa and I saw this school, the kids, they're not formally educated. They're educated by mothers, just moms who are a part of the village, and you would never believe, but they're teaching anatomy, and those kids are learning English like through just moms, which is just phenomenal. And one thing I realized is a lot of those kids, they don't go past like second grade, third grade. So they're kind of, the trajectory of their life is kind of, not where you want to be, and like one of the biggest things that I noticed that I can apply into what we're going to be talking about later is the way that they look at education. So you talk to a kid in South Africa and you ask them about school, they consider it an honor and a privilege to be able to go to school. And one of the things that I always tell my medical students that I'm mentoring is always tell yourself that you get to study, not that you have to study. Because people, usually we get into this mentality, we're like, oh man, I have to study. Now I got to put in 10 hours of work. This sucks, but the thing is, we're so privileged. Like, think about being in that kid's place where you don't have food, water, electricity, shelter. Like, if you had the honor and privilege to actually study something, to be able to give back to your family, the way that they look at education is as a real opportunity. So they would tell you, I get to study. And that's something that, I really, really ingrained deeply in my head every single day that I studied. I would remind myself right now, I have to put in, for step 1, for step 2 CK, sometimes you study 12 hours, 14 hours, 16
Yep.
hours in a day. And the only thing I would tell myself is one day, this could mean the difference between life and death. When I'm in front of a patient and I have to make a decision to either save their life or make the wrong decision, I know that the hours that I'm putting in right now, that I'm dedicating, it's a part of a bigger picture. It's not just me sitting in this library and just grinding it out because of this exam, but there's an application to this.
Right.
And if I could focus on that big picture, I can be more positive as I go through it, and being gracious. So before we jump into the next phase, I want to just let everybody know out there, Albert Einstein, I don't know if you've heard of Albert Einstein, but if you had, he's one of the most brilliant minds in history. He said, thank you 100 times a day. And we can all learn from this because basically what that's saying is be in a gracious state. So when I say I get to study versus I have to study, I'm appreciating the fact that I can study. Great minds, they learn to appreciate the process, and I know that you feel very strongly about this because you are the CEO of Picmonic, right? So, and that's just something that's a connecting thread between all people who do great things, I feel like. So definitely gratitude, that's a big one.
It's huge. All right, well, let's do this. Let's shift over a little bit. I don't know, I'm down to go anywhere you want to go with this conversation. But I do, I want to make sure, I know that we've got some students out there who are in the journey today. They're first year medical students, second year medical students. It looks like even potentially third years out there, maybe some residents, practicing physicians, others from around the world. Feel free. I definitely want to invite them to write in questions, and we'll try and get to as many of those as we can. But Nav, I want to ask you, when you look back over the last couple of years, what is something that you know today that you didn't know then that you wish you would have, right? Kind of just that general idea of, I wish as a first year medical student going in, I would have known this. What's one of those kind of pieces of advice that you would pay forward, given that idea?
That's a very smart question. Yeah, if I could talk to day one med school
Mm-hmm.
now and tell them one thing, it would be set a daily goal, and make sure that you check all of those daily goals off the list. And big picture, so Kobe Bryant, he talks about climbing Mount Everest,
Okay.
right? We could talk about climbing Mount Everest. For those of you out there, Mount Everest is the tallest mountain in the world, right? And say, Ron, me and you were going on a hiking trip and we're going to climb Mount Everest. Now, every time me and you are looking at the top of that mountain, we're like, dude, that is the biggest mountain in the world. How the hell are we going to get to the top, right? And that's kind of how med school is. Med school is like Mount Everest. How do we get to the top?
Right.
One thing Kobe Bryant said, it always resonated with me, was stop looking at the top of the mountain. Look down and focus on one step at a time, 1 foot at a time. So as you in one day, focus on one goal and execute that goal very well and take it step by step. Once you're done with your goals for the day, take a break. Just make sure that you're executing consistently. And over time, before you know it, you'll be at the top of the mountain, and I was just in South Africa. I got to climb a mountain and I was so scared, man. I thought I was going to die. And I really thought I was going to die. And this was like, my whole life was flashing before my eyes. And I realized I kept telling myself one step at a time. Cause like, if I looked to the sides and I saw thousands of feet downward and I was like, oh man, I'm going to die here. Like it wouldn't work. And that was another, I applied that principle and I made sure just one step at a time and it would get there. So if I could have done that day one of med school and I executed to that level, I think I would have been as even better, So that's definitely one piece of advice I would love to give.
That's great. It's interesting, I think whether it's medical school or even now both running businesses, sometimes looking up at the big looming obstacle in front of you, it's overwhelming, right? And the challenge to get from A to Z can be very difficult, but being able to go day by day, step by step, breaking the big piece into little small pieces and just trying to execute upon those with discipline. That definitely gets you further faster.
That speaks volumes of the mentality of an athlete, right? So when you're an athlete, you're always going to have obstacles, but if you want to be a great athlete, every obstacle is an opportunity. It's not something you should be afraid of. It's something that you can learn from, and that's one thing I try to, when I mentor my students, I'm always telling them failure is your best friend. The person who has failed the most has the most knowledge, and like the individual like you, CEO of Picmonic, you probably failed more times than the beginner has ever tried, and that's one thing where in medical school, get used to failing, because third year you're going to hit the wards, and no matter how much you studied, you're going to feel kind of dumb, because everybody's smarter than you, and everybody's always going to be smarter than you. So kind of embracing the negative aspects where I could say that this is a challenge, or this is something that I could fail at potentially, but looking at that as an opportunity, again, it's infusing that gratitude, right? It's appreciating the moment regardless of what it brings, right? And I feel like a great athlete does that, a great doctor does that, a great CEO does that. It's applicable all across the board, right? So, and I love that. It's a win-win.
We always, one of our mentors very early on just used to drill in our minds, just fail fast and iterate. If you're going to fail, which you're going to fail, do it quickly, learn from it, and move on, right? And so that's something that we treat ourselves to in business all the time. Is just, we run a lot of experiments. We're always trying to improve ourselves, our platform, our product, everything about what we do. But we know we're not always going to get it right, and we don't expect to. It's unrealistic to think that we're always going to nail it out of the park. But if we're going to fail, do it quickly, learn from it, and then move forward. Well, and that's an interesting thing too. Talk about mentorship. I mean, you say that you're currently mentoring other students, and I know that we both are very, very passionate about this kind of pay it forward mentality, seeing if we can help the students who are walking the path that we've been in. And we lean heavily on mentors. Can you talk at all about, advice or suggestions for within the realm of mentorship?
Yeah. So, in med school, they always say, learn it, apply it, teach it, right? It's something along those lines. Have you heard it? It's something like that. But so one thing that I realized through mentorship, what was it?
Is it like see one, do one, teach one? That's like the meta.
Thank you. See one, wait, so what was it? See one, learn one, teach one?
See one, do one, teach one.
See one, do one, teach one. So yeah, keeping it in context to medical school, it's like that. Like you see something, once you learn it, the best way to really keep it in your head is to teach it. So I really fell in love with teaching medicine when I started falling in love with the human body. So, the human body is a system. In a system, everything's connected. So there's always a process. And for me, I became obsessed with that. And the more that I learned, I really wanted to pay it forward. So one of my mentors in med school was actually Dr. Alex, who's our director of education, who just killed it on the board. So he works for Kaplan while he's doing residency, right? And he teaches. And that's one of his biggest trades. So the thing that I learned from him is he always taught me that I should pay it forward. So whenever I would teach something, whenever I would learn something, I'd always teach it, right? And in turn, I would actually learn more. So when I started developing that over time, now I have medical students from all over the world, India, Pakistan, the Caribbean, America, all over. We'll FaceTime and we'll talk. And it's just simple advice. And one thing that I realized is with our mentees, the people that we mentor, you and I, the more that I give my mentees, so, making them believe in themselves, but also giving them applicable things that will help them move further in their life. One thing that I've realized, and I know we talked about this yesterday, is the more we pay it forward, the more we open up the chances of our mentors who we look up to give us more. And I found that really interesting because I realized the more I actually give, the more I'm able to receive. So one of the greatest things that I learned from actually mentoring students is the more that I give, the more I'm able to receive from my mentors. So it's a win-win. So anybody out there, you're never too young to mentor somebody. There's always someone out there who needs advice about something. And, rather than keeping it all inside and being really competitive, one thing I always say is be competitive with yourself. Only be competitive with yourself and who you were yesterday. Don't compete with other people. When I'm able to actually apply this mentality, I can give information to my mentors without ever like thinking twice, you know? And yeah, so, you know, why don't you tell me a little bit about your experiences with how, you know, I know you probably mentor so many people and you probably have some great mentors. Have you experienced the same thing?
It's the universe karmic ways of working. By no means do I understand. I've been incredibly fortunate to be connected to so many brilliant people, especially even since I started my entrepreneurial journey with Picmonic. Matt Patinsky, the gentleman who started Blackboard, a learning management system, is an investor in Picmonic and sits on our board of directors. And the guy is just absolutely brilliant. And every time I'm in his presence, I'm literally just blown away by he's just so genuine, so humble, and yet so brilliant. And he's one of those people that I can spend 15 minutes with him and walk away with just these amazing golden nuggets that help me improve myself, uh, help our business do incredible things. And yet, you know, I also look for opportunities to always pay it forward as well, just to help the next generation of people trying to do cool things. You know, everybody's got their own realm of things that they either are trying to improve or work on or do better. And there's a lot that I think I've even learned in my journey, because I have failed so many times along even the journey of Picmonic with trying to get where we are today, because it's not easy and it doesn't need to be easy, but you can learn from it. And especially surrounding yourself with people who've been there and done that, we can probably, you know, jump over a few of those steps to just maybe not fail quite as often. So let's you know, I see a couple questions here that I do want to jump in and make sure we get answered. um Oh, goodness. Well, before we do that, though, you know, I actually want to give you a few minutes to talk about it, because it's something that just constantly comes up, and I see some questions coming in about it. Uh, Being successful in medical school, you know, getting into medical school is difficult enough. But then it's like you have to relearn how to learn. The first couple of years, a lot of science information you got to take in, you got to learn it, remember it, got to pass step one, going to clinicals, all the shelf exams, step two. What were some of the things that you, either the tools and resources that you used, or just advice that you would pay forward again to the students following in your footsteps as a physician, or as soon to be a physician moving on into residency, in order to be successful? And I know you also have the opportunity in your current place to talk to a lot of people who've been there, done that, and are successful. So what are some tips, tricks, pieces of advice that you would pass on as far as the actual grind of learning and retaining information, passing these difficult exams? And I'm going to stop there and let you answer that first.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, definitely. When it comes to resources, obviously they call it UFAP. That's actually what they call it now. I
Yep.
just found this out very recently. But so obviously UWorld gold standard.
Mm-hmm.
Just a tidbit. Hussein Sattar, Pathoma.
Yep.
He was my Kaplan professor, right? So I got to see the man in the flesh. Like I got to, you know, shake his hand, talk to him in person. And one time I asked him about UWorld, and I was like, hey, like, what are your opinions? Because this was a Kaplan course, and we have the Kaplan
Yep.
Cube, right? So I was like, I've heard UWorld is something that's of value. I hadn't taken step one yet, so I was very curious. And he looked at me in my eyes, and he was like, my students average 250s, and they do UWorld 3 times. And I was like,
That's it all.
wow, okay. Pathoma just told me do UWorld 3 times, right? And that's something that, I mean, you know, when Hussein Sattar says his students average a 250, do UWorld 3 times. So we have to actually put that into perspective, though. Like that's almost 6,500 questions, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of questions.
That's a lot of questions. I watched the previous webinars, and the one thing that was the common thread is 3,000 questions is like a must. You have to do at least 3,000, you know, and like UWorld might have 2,500. So, you know, maybe doing UWorld 1.5 times minimum, but definitely UWorld, Pathoma for pathology, and the first aid. The first aid, man, like, you know, even for step 2 CK, like sometimes I would be like, man, you know, I didn't learn this in step 1. This wasn't taught. And I go
Mm-hmm.
back to the first aid, everything's in there. It word for word, like you'll never know the first aid inside out, because it's I don't know, this holy grail, whatever it is, it just has so much information. But we're really blessed. We live in a time where, back 30 years ago, people were like stuck in the library reading books. Like, we have Picmonic. We have an application on our iPhone that we could use to be able to, retain information. So, that's why boards are getting more challenging, because we have more access to all these resources. But definitely, if I could say the resources, it would be UWorld, Pathoma, First Aid. Picmonic is a great resource, by the way. Like this, I personally was not able to use Picmonic because I didn't actually know about it. And I wish I would have learned about it earlier, because our director of education, Alex, he used it, and he scored over 250 on all of his boards. And the thing that I've heard from everybody in regards to Picmonic, with all the boards, there's so much information and there's so many little things where it's like, you can learn the concepts, you can learn the physiology and always remember it because it's beautiful. But then there's like the mechanism of action of some drug, and it's like, there's just such fine details where Picmonic, I've seen some of the smartest people in the world talk about Picmonic and say they used it and it helped them. So to me, I always, when I'm sharing resources, I'm like, hey guys, try out Picmonic, see how it is, because from what I've heard, man, great things.
Oh, I love that, and I appreciate it. I know that it's something that a lot of people are skeptical about, the idea of learning with pictures and stories and cartoons, but there's an immense amount of science that backs it up, and we've even done our own studies proving over 330% increases in long-term memory retention. But
I was drawing every day in first year, second year. I drew out the systems: cardiovascular, respiratory, renal, GI, CNS, and I added the anatomy, the physio, path, and pharm all to it on my wall. Dude, I'm a huge fan of that, because it does. It's scientifically proven to increase retention. That's why Picmonic is genius. It's brilliant because it will help you. And that's why it'll be successful, because it will genuinely help and it's scientifically proven. So that to me is a win-win, right? I mean,
so if we were to recap though, I mean, students need to do, when we talk about boards, whether it's step 1 or step 2, UWorld, First Aid, different versions, Pathoma. I know there are a few other versions that are like Pathoma now coming out. First Aid, so UWorld, First Aid, Pathoma, Picmonic, great resources. There's a lot of tools and resources out there today. I know when I was in med school, we had very few. It was really, really limited, right? Well, I guess it's been many, many years, but there's a lot of great tools and resources coming out these days. So interesting to kind of check that out. I've got someone saying, what did Nav find most difficult about studying for the boards? What was one of the most challenging things for you about step 1 or step 2?
The NBMEs. So, after you take, before you take the exam, you take all these practice assessments, right? And these, I learned something from step 1 to CK. Like, I learned something about emotional intelligence, which I would love to share, because, so, you take, and it depends on how many NBMEs people take. You could go on the NBME.org website, and I believe there's at least 5 or 6 NBMEs you could take as practice exams for step 1. They're very accurate. So a lot of people that I've talked to, usually their score is plus or minus 5 points from their last NBME they took. So they're very predictive of how you're going to score, right? And if I had to pick one thing that was the most discouraging and the most disheartening, it was, putting in so much work and then like going into those exams thinking I'm going to kill it, man. And then coming out disappointed, just heartbroken, and then finding it in me to go harder. That was one of the biggest challenges I had, I would say. And like for step 1, it was, again, just trying to be really positive and trusting the process. Like, I know I was putting in work, and I knew that if I stayed consistent with the work, Michael Jordan said, work ethic eliminates fear. And for me, the better my work ethic got, the less fear I had, and even when the NBMEs kind of let me down, I brought more. I use that as fire. So I could actually, have more drive and do even better next time. Right. So for step 1, that was a process, and it was figuring it out. And the reason people score better on CK than step 1 is because you've already been through the process one time. So when I got to CK, I recognized that I was able to identify with when I was in a funk, when I was not, in my zone, because, at MBME, I didn't do as well, and now I'm down. And one thing I got better at, my emotional intelligence. So, actually addressing how you feel helps. Like one time while I was taking the MBME for Step 2 CK, which is only a few months ago, I didn't do as well as I would have liked. And again, the work ethic was there. It just didn't show, and I was so frustrated. And my fiance, she's a medical student as well, so we always share the experience together. And one thing that I used to do on Step 1 is if I didn't do as well, I would find a reason to fight with her. You know what I'm saying? And like, I would ask myself, like, why am I? Because I would displace the emotion onto her. And one thing that I did in CK though, I recognized that I was about to do that, and then I was like, no, I'm going to be vulnerable and I'm going to tell her how I feel. So I did something very different. I actually told her, hey, babe, I don't feel good right now because I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed because I work so hard and the results aren't showing.
Yep.
And, I kind of want to take it out on things, but that's not what I want to do. Like, I want to be able to work harder. So I need to tell you how I feel. And I actually cried. Like I let out the tears, and, we're men, we don't really cry ever, or I really don't. But that helped me so much. And I realized that being more emotionally intelligent, actually acknowledging what I'm going through and how I'm feeling, it actually helped me get over the emotion faster, and then I could get back to the zone faster, right? Yep. That was a key piece of advice, where if you could be vulnerable with yourself, be honest with where you're at. Everybody starts nowhere, and then they build themselves up in medicine. You know what I'm saying? So just embrace it. You're not alone. Everybody goes through the struggle, and the more vulnerable we are, it helped me a lot. So I hope that helps somebody.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. And I know that sometimes we feel, especially those trying to become healthcare professionals, like maybe that they're at the top of the food chain, and there's a lot of ego, and people, it's hard to put their guard down and ask for help, or seek advice, or reach out in a time of need. And yet it's a challenging journey. I mean, we have said it many times in the past, but becoming a doctor or going through any of the healthcare professions, or even just becoming, not to say a lawyer, or, any of this, it takes a lot of time and energy. And it's reasonable that, there's going to be times where you're burnt out, where you're exhausted, where you have lows. Even in entrepreneurship, I'd say it's a roller coaster. There's some phenomenal highs, but there's some really, really low lows, right? So
that rings a bell in my soul, because I always try to tell myself, don't get too high on the highs, don't get too low on the lows. Mm-hmm. Stay centered, because there's days, like you're saying, the most incredible things happen. Like yesterday, for example, we talked on the phone. I was talking to another CEO before that. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. Like, I feel fantastic, And then there's other days you're about to take Step 2 CK and you feel horrendous. You're worried about your future. And, that's the process of life. There's going to be the highest of highs, the lowest of lows. Jay-Z, a rapper, he says the game got valleys and peaks, so there's going to be valleys, there's going to be peaks. And the more we're able to just stay centered, and, again, work ethic. If we could keep that work ethic the same, the daily goals the same, and just kind of use fuel, we can break through anything. I really believe that. Like, we can get through anything. And if we're a student to it, we could come out stronger, smarter, faster, and better every time, no matter how bad or good it is, So, yeah, no, just thank you for bringing that up. That made a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, it's when you talk about being vulnerable, whether it's with yourself or with a loved one, through a challenging time, or especially when we're disappointed or frustrated, do you have any other aspects of, dealing with challenges or burnout? Especially, I feel like so many people I talk to, it's easy to get exhausted. We go really, really hard for a long point in time, and at some point we break. Is there anything that you've done in order to, especially, being a med student, running your own business, traveling the world, sounds like you've got a relationship on the side. Those are all incredibly time consuming things, right? And this is just one small snippet and glimpse into your life. But how do you manage to keep that balance and that, kind of center line?
Yeah, no, that's a great question as well. And again, that goes back to my daily goal. Like I never try to do too much or too little every day. Like my
Mhm.
daily goals, I have them written on my calendar, which I might. It's not. It's over there, so I was gonna grab it. But every day I'll write down the goals and I make sure that I just execute those. So I never do more or less. Exercise. I exercise 4 or 5 times a week, and that's obviously my release. So we all have bent up frustration. Take it out on a punching bag. Take it out on the weights. Take it out somewhere where it's constructive and it could not hurt anybody. You know what I'm saying? So that's definitely a big one. Relationships, like you're saying, whether it's the fiance or whether it's my mother and my father and my sister, but I try to take time to talk to them, and that's a big thing is the people that we're closest to. It doesn't have to be an everyday thing. It could be once a month, once a week, whatever works for you. But, taking time out for the things that I love, for the people that I love, and then creativity, being creative. That's my outlet. So like when I'm feeling some type of way, I know that I can write a post and it's gonna inspire a million people. So whether it's a video production, whether it's creating content, or whether it's thinking about what MEDspiration's next project could be, how I could inspire people. But for me, exercising creativity on a daily basis is something that I think it keeps me sane. Like because there is so much to balance every day, and if I don't have my creative outlet, whether that's writing, whether that's, and these aren't even things you have to share with the world necessarily. You could do it for yourself. But so kind of that. If I could sum it up, I guess I would say is just not doing too much or too little every day, catering to smoothie. I drink a smoothie every day, fruits and vegetables with a Vitamix. Like diet. They've proven scientifically that you eat good, you feel good, and you won't be depressed if you eat healthy, type of thing. So and that's kind of superficial, but overall, the better you eat, the better you feel, and the better you do. In life. So get your vegetables.
No, it's good, and it's true. It's funny for those who've seen any of the previous webinars. We had Dr. Taylor Brana on here, the Happy Doc, and he was talking about several of things just in order to become a happy person and a happy physician in life. Despite the up and downs and the challenges, and a lot of the themes resonate. They hold true across the board. So. Well, we're wrapping up on the hour. I want to make sure that you have an opportunity. I'm trying to look at some of these other questions that come in, and for any of these questions that we didn't get to, if you're listening today in the audience, please feel free to write into feedback@picmonic.com or reach out to Nav on any one of his social channels. I know he does his best to get back to everyone as well. So in the last few minutes, is there anything else that we didn't have a chance to talk about that you would want to bring up now?
Yeah. For the med students out there, and I hope people found this useful because I enjoyed this conversation so much. So thank you, Ron, for
Yeah.
on. For all the students out there, I believe in you. I really genuinely believe in you. You can do it. Just believe in the process and be willing to work hard. Good things come to those who work hard and stay true. One of the biggest things that I learned is, you don't have to tell people what you're doing. If you're staying true to what you're doing, the truth speaks for itself, right? So work hard, because if you're trying to get into healthcare and medicine, what's your why? What's your purpose? Make sure that your purpose is something that's bigger than you. It's to help others. It's got to be bigger than you, because if you're doing it for the money, if you're doing it for the fame, you will not make it, because
Right.
you can't do this for other people. You have to do it for yourself. And I've been there. So I've been in the trenches where I've thought, am I ever going to make it? Is there ever going to be a time where this is going to be over, or am I going to let everybody down, the entire world down, you know? And believe me, everybody's been there. Keep trucking. If you could keep going, trust me, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Work hard, stay true, my friends.
I love it. Dr. Nav, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. Really look forward to continuing conversations and friendships. I expect you to come back in about a year and tell us how many more countries MEDspiration has been able to do missions in, all the great stuff you guys are doing. I encourage everyone who's watching to go and follow MEDspiration on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I mean, incredible content and videos and truly inspiring stuff that they're doing. You guys have a wonderful mission. My hat, honestly, is off to you in so many ways. I really just have enjoyed chatting with you today, you sharing your tips and tricks. And I also know that based on a conversation,
Definitely.
and anybody who also wants to donate to MEDspiration, or how do we get some of the swag? I want a MEDspiration shirt. You got to hook this up.
I am sending it to you, my friend. I got you. I got you. I'll take care of you.
I love it. I love it. So just
It's going to be a Picmonic shirt, please.
You know, we're going to have to do that. And there's a Picmonic store. Our awesome team just launched a merchandise store because we have a lot of people saying that they wanted, actually, the funny thing was socks and T-shirts and hoodies. So it exists. You can go to picmonic.com, sign up for a free trial. If you do want to get a subscription, MEDspired30 will get you 30% off. Dr. Nav, absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much, my man. I look forward to keeping in touch. For everyone else, good luck in your journey. And if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out to Nav.